engineering, energy and environmental science, health and biology, but also the social sciences and humanities. The reason I'm presenting this is to show that if we now move to the global framework of the global goals for sustainable development, the so-called UN SDGs, based on the previous data that show where the cooperation was already existing between our universities, we have decided to select first of the UN SDGs at the core of the project that we will derive during the first years of the EC2U Alliance. And these first UN SDGs are the number 3, good health and well-being, the number 4, quality education, with a focus on multilingualism and interculturalism, and the number 11, sustainable cities and communities. So now you understand why UN SDGs are very important to the EC2U Alliance. And in more details, these first UN SDGs will be at the core of what we call the first virtual institutes that will combine education, research, and innovation in SDG-based missions. And among these activities, we will create the first multidisciplinary joint master programs, which are intimately related to the UN SDGs on good health and well-being, quality education, sustainable cities and communities. We will also organize summer and winter schools, also related to the SDGs, joint PhD programs, and of course, research and innovation projects. And in addition, every 6 months, there will be specific sessions on the SDGs at the recurring EC2U Forum. This month, we had the first EC2U Forum. The next one will be in May in Turku. And without further delay, you can see here the program of today's webinar. We will first have 3 speakers, which I will individually present in a few minutes. We will then have a moment of discussion with our 3 speakers. Then we will have a roundtable with 5 participants, and again, before closing, another session of questions and answers. So now it is my great pleasure to call our very first speaker for today, and I'm delighted to welcome Veronica Safrancova. Veronica, you are the head of the UN Environment Programme Office in Brussels, and you will give us a global picture of what the UN SDGs mean, and in particular how they impacted and will further impact the European policies and the Green Deal. So Veronica, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for being with us. The screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Ludovic, and it is a great pleasure for me to be here. And thank you for the invitation. And first of all, congratulations to the EC2U establishment. I am a great fan of European University initiatives, and I'm really pleased that that EC2U is fully established now and with this fantastic program portfolio. I am here to contribute to the SDGs and especially the focus on environmental policy. But I must say that half of the probably this because you know it all. But it's really important that you committed to yourself to the SDGs. So my task is to talk about SDGs and European Green Deal especially, but I'm here about all to you. What have to say about this? And I would like to ask Flora if
my apologies, Veronica. Maybe the sound, the quality is a bit low. Could you maybe just switch off your video and just maintain the sound?
I don't see it, yes or not. Is it visible?
Yes. Veronica, could you maybe switch off your camera because the connection... It is. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So I will see now. Excellent. So I will have two parts. One of them, I will introduce the SDGs and UNEP's role in implementing them. Also about the impact of COVID on the SDG progress and the need for accelerated action. In the second part, I'll be a bit more specific about the Agenda 2030 and how it is linked to the European Green Deal and the Green Deal diplomacy, and how the Agenda 2030 is like a compass for sustainable recovery in Europe. For those that don't know UNEP, United Nations Environment Programme, I will just say very briefly who we are. So we are a leading global authority that is setting the global environmental agenda, and we promote coherent implementation of environmental dimension of sustainable development within the UN system. We are a normative agency, and we focus especially on science and data, and hence it was very important for me also to hear, Ludovic, from you that the science is a strong pillar for the alliance. We are also serving as a secretariat to a number of multilateral environmental agreements. I will not name them all, there are about 15 of them. And some of your work, I hope that you know and you work with it. For example, flagship report, Global Environment Outlook, or Emission Gap Report, Adaptation Gap Report, or very recently, a zoonotic report that is looking at the root causes of zoonotic diseases and trying to come up with recommendations for policymakers to prevent and respond to future disease outbreaks. We also do a lot of work on green recovery. So last year was very important, and I will not now waste time to go into that, but hopefully we will have another opportunity. So if I can ask Flora for another slide. So the SDGs you have seen, hope the second, if maybe I have delay there, but in the second slide you can see the very well-known picture, and you saw it from Ludovic already, the whole list of the SDGs, which constitute a global compact to create a fair society and future where nobody is left behind. The goals were adopted by all countries of the UN in 2015, and they encompass every aspect of human and planetary well-being. So it's a universal call to action to end poverty, to protect the earth, and ensure all people enjoy peace and prosperity. What is important is that they are integrated, so that action in one area will affect outcomes in other areas, and the development must be balanced: social, economic, and environmental sustainability. Flora, if I can ask you for the third slide. We can still hear me. So that's our UNEP's role in the SDG implementation. UNEP delivers on the environmental dimension of the Agenda 2030, as I mentioned at the beginning. Behind the 17 SDGs, there are altogether 169 targets and 241 indicators, which are necessary to measure the progress towards achieving the SDGs. UNEP is custodian of 25 of them, of the SDGs, across the goal number 6, which is clean water and sanitation, number 8, decent work and economic growth, number 12, which is responsible consumption and production, 14, life below water, 15, life on land, and 17, partnerships for the goals. The indicators that I mentioned under these SDGs, they cover, for example, resource management and protection of water, marine and terrestrial ecosystems, circular economy, and so on. We are working on monitoring the progress together with UN member states. We are providing methodologies and guidance on the collection, review, and reporting of the data, and also analysis of the data. We are building partnerships and strategies and raising awareness. We are using our communication channels to raise awareness on actions of all kinds of support, or for example, so the UN Act Now campaign that is designed for individual action to climate change and sustainability. If I can ask Flora for the next slide, which is, I think, number 4. And I do apologize, I don't see how the slides change. So here you should see COVID impact on SDG progress. As we enter the year 2021 after the horrendous year 2020, it is clear that more action is needed to deliver the SDGs by 2030. The annual Sustainable Development Goals report provides overview of the world's implementation efforts to date, highlighting areas of progress, but also where action still needs to be taken. The 2020 report notes that progress has been made in many areas, for example, improving maternal and child health, expanding access to electricity, or increasing women's representation in government. But there are some areas that were offset. For example, growing food insecurity, deterioration of the natural environment, or persistent inequalities. And of course, and very sadly, the COVID-19 pandemic has unleashed an unprecedented crisis, causing further disruptions of SDG progress, with the world's poorest and most vulnerable affected are the most. So you can see on the screen, on the, I hope that you are seeing the slide with the COVID impact on SDG progress. Yes, that's the one. So you can see some of the key findings, amongst which is that estimated 71 million people are expected to be pushed back into extreme poverty in 2020, which is the first rise in global poverty since 1998. So that's a very alarming number. Underemployment and unemployment due to the crisis means some 1.6 billion already vulnerable workers in the informal economy may be significantly affected, which is about half of global workforce, also very alarming number. Climate change is occurring much faster than anticipated, and we all have been witnessing that 2019 was the second warmest on record, and the end of the warmest decade, 2010 to 2019. Ocean acidification is accelerating, land degradation continues, massive numbers of species are at risk of extinction, and unsustainable consumption production patterns remain pervasive. School closures have kept 90% of students worldwide out of school, which is about 1.57 billion, also another alarming number. So while the crisis is imperiling progress towards SDGs, it also makes their achievement all the more urgent and necessary. If I can ask Flora for the next slide, and I'm coming to the end almost, is the achievement of the SDGs comes with a deadline, as we know, 2030. As we have seen, the overall action is not yet advancing, and I'll also show a slide that is specific for Europe. But with just 9 years to go, we really need to step up the efforts. The decade of action that was declared for accelerating sustainable solutions to all the world's biggest challenges, ranging from poverty and gender to climate change, inequality, and closing the finance gap. The UN Secretary General called in September 2019 on all sectors of society to mobilize for a decade of action on three levels. One, global action, with securing greater leadership, more resources, and smarter solutions for SDG implementation. Local action, embedded the needed transitions in policies, budgets, institutions, and regulatory frameworks of government, cities, and local authorities. And last but not least, people action, including youth, civil society, media, private sector, unions, academia, other stakeholders, to generate unstoppable movement pushing for the required transformations. And that on this soil, virtual soil, is really important. If we can go to the next slide, and that's quickly referring to the European situation. We have the European Green Deal that is integral part of the EU strategy to implement the Agenda 2030 and SDGs. It is among the priorities and guidelines for the new Commission that already is very much embedded and in place. It is very much at the center. The Green Deal represents holistic and integrated approach in transforming the economy and society, putting more on sustainable path, in which all the actions and policy areas contribute to the objective of sustainable development. On the pictures you can see the SDGs and the priorities of the Commission, so there are very strong links. The Green Deal is very integrated and multi-faced approach, which is indeed very much needed. But what we need also not to forget in all this, that it should not be only green growth strategy, but we need to put emphasis on people and on the social importance of the European Green Deal. So we can see under the European Green Deal, lots of policies coming out: circular economy, biodiversity strategy, farm-to-fork strategy, lots of focus on climate and energy renovation. So the ambitions are fantastic. What is important is that they will be implemented. Another important thing in the context of SDGs and all these efforts is that there is a strong external dimension that is being implemented, and the external diplomacy. And that is going to be my last slide. Thank you, Flora. So in order to achieve sustainable development worldwide, we need to put also the Green Deal diplomacy externally and through both a setting example as leadership, but also through trade policy, development support, and other external policies. What is extremely important is the focus on rule-based multilateralism that is absolutely essential to address global challenges. And EU leadership and diplomacy is critical in advancing the key multilateral processes towards achieving SDGs. And I listed a few of the highlights, including the UN General Assembly, the high-level political forum on the SDGs, the G7, G20, both COPs, COP on climate change, COP on biodiversity in 2021, of course, Paris Agreement, and so on. We all were watching with enthusiasm. I think it's now 2 weeks ago or last Monday, the European Foreign Affairs Council adopted Council conclusions on climate and energy diplomacy. Very strong conclusions, commitment of the EU, not only on climate and energy, but also recognizing biodiversity loss and environmental degradation as also a threat to peace and stability. So with that, I think I'm almost coming to the end. Now I promised last slide. Now this is coming now, the last slide, which is the Agenda 2030 is in the context, especially in the context of pandemic, compass to orient also the European recovery in a sustainable way, considering together the economic, social, and environmental dimension. I put there a picture of the Europe Sustainable Development Report 2020, which actually shows that even before the pandemic started, no European country was on track to achieve the 17 SDGs by 2030. And of course, during the pandemic, the situation is even worse. Europe faces the greatest challenges in implementation of SDGs in areas like sustainable diets and agriculture, climate, but also biodiversity, and strengthening the convergence of living standards across its countries and regions. However, the second picture is the JRC, the Joint Research Center publication, which was published in December last year and shows a strong link between the Recover Plan and all 17 SDGs. So overall, the EU Recovery Plan addresses more or less all the 17 goals For example, strong emphasis on SDG 3, strengthening capacity for early warning, risk reduction and management of national and local and global health risks. SDG 9, sustainable industrialization and innovation. SDG 8 on economic growth and employment. So only truly green recovery from COVID-19, in line with the SDGs, can help to slow climate change and prevent next pandemic, but also contribute to building fair and more resilient societies worldwide. And I'm really, really pleased that this is the topic of the Alliance, of EC2U Alliance, because that's what we need. We need partnerships across all stakeholders, and universities play absolutely essential role in all these processes. As educators, as researchers, innovators, of course, students, who are the strongest voice and needs to be heard. So I'm very, very grateful that you gave me the space to speak here today. I hope that it was not too long, Ludovic. Please do tell me off.
On time.
But great pleasure, and I'm looking forward to discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Apologies for the small technical problem at the start, but fortunately your slides could be visible to the audience quite rapidly. So thank you for your understanding. And without further delay, I would like to actually call the second speaker. We are really pleased and honored to have today Dr. Carsten Gabler, who is the scientific coordinator of the UNESCO chair for Global Understanding and Sustainability at the University of Vienna. So you will, Karsten, tell us more about how the SDGs may impact different levels, including universities and higher education institutions. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Ludovic. Yeah, for me, it's a very great privilege to be here, participate in this event, and share some thoughts on sustainability in higher education institutions with you. And in a certain way, we switch levels now. That means from the very big picture of European sustainability policies, we switch to the ground level of how can we implement the SDGs in higher education institutions. And I'm really looking forward to your comments and ideas in the discussion later, because this is, I think, what such a network is about, sharing experiences and creating ideas together. So what I want to talk about today is the questions: how can higher education institutions contribute to sustainability or to achieving the SDGs? And to be very clear from the beginning, my goal is not to talk about any specific SDG and provide you with the 10 things you have to do so that your university shines in a particular SDG area. So there will be no recipes here for guaranteed success. But what I want to do instead is to talk about the conditions for the emergence of what I would call a culture of sustainability in our organizations. And simply because I'm convinced that without such a culture, without, in a certain way, lived sustainability on an everyday basis, strategies for implementing the SDGs in the end are not worth the paper they are written on. And for full disclosure, I have absolutely nothing against strategy papers. They are an important part of organizational change or organizational development. But if we want to anchor sustainability in the organization, everyday culture is the key. And to put a bit more flesh on the bone of this, let me present you three main ideas here. And this is, of course, massively incomplete, but that will hopefully give you a good impression of the overall direction I argue in. So my first idea is a bit more general. It is about the self-understanding of higher education institutions in the context of the SDGs, or in the context of what some call the great transformation towards sustainability. It will probably be hardly surprising, and Veronica also just addressed this, if someone argues that higher education institutions, and especially universities, are essential to tackle today's grand challenges. First, of course, because a big deal of the research on issues related to the SDGs, for instance, is done in universities, and they are, and I would say they rightly consider themselves as centers of knowledge production. And there's also a second argument that is often mentioned when thinking about the role of universities in today's transformation, and that is that universities are the place where future leaders or future decision makers are trained. And what I find interesting about both of these arguments is that they are both outward looking. They see the university on one side and society as something external on the other side. And this is the basic thinking that also underlies the idea of the third mission of universities and higher education institutions. So the people in the ivory tower should not anymore be innovative and produce knowledge only for the sake of science itself, but put themselves at the service of society. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing bad about this, but I think we tend to create kind of a blind spot through this thinking, and that is the university as an organization itself. We put it a bit provocative and say, just because there are so many smart and sustainability savvy people in a university does not necessarily mean that it is itself a powerhouse of sustainable development. So when we look at the different areas universities are active in, when you think of their role as operators of buildings and technical facilities, as employers or as consumers of goods and services, there are so many real-world problems just at the doorstep, so within the organization, that if you were interested as a scientist in transdisciplinary research projects, you wouldn't even need to leave your office building. So I would argue that focusing a bit more and maybe parallel to other projects on sustainability in-house could make universities even more laboratories of change and would also give them credibility to lead change processes in their local and regional contexts. So to come to my initial point, a true culture of sustainability in higher education institutions first and foremost means beginning at the own doorstep. My second point is more or less directly related to the first one, and it's about the culture of collaboration within higher education institutions, or more precisely, it's about cross-boundary collaboration that brings together the different groups in a university. And let me begin with a very personal experience I think many of you can relate to. Coming from sustainability research, I very soon in my own work developed a great interest in transdisciplinarity and the principles of transdisciplinary research. And one of the things that attracted me most was that basically every recommendation on transdisciplinary research says that success rests on humility and the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes. And I always found that a very nice contrast to this kind of Shark Tank atmosphere that you can experience in many other areas of academia. And now if we transfer that to our organizations, I would assume that many colleagues share this view of themselves as open-minded, empathetic, patient, and understanding persons who are perfectly suited to lead transdisciplinary projects with external partners. But there are situations in which this self-perception is suddenly confronted with the harsh reality, for instance, of a university administration that doesn't accept some minor details of your travel expense report, or a janitor who is drilling a hole in the wall of your seminar room while you try to read Aristotle with your students. I mean, Aristotle. And these situations are exactly the situations where our understanding of university community, in which differences between academic staff and professional staff play no role at all, is pushed to its limits. And it might sound just entertaining or a funny story if you are not affected by it, but I think there is a serious core in it. And that's the still rather strong borders between academic and professional staff in our organizations. And I'm not entirely sure how it is in other countries, but at least in German universities, the academic and the non-academic areas appear to be parallel universes that, well, okay, occasionally get in touch, but in their normal operations, they are quite separate. Now, one could ask, why is this a problem? It is a problem first, of course, because if we want to begin at our own doorstep and make university operations more sustainable, collaboration across all groups is indispensable. So implementing the SDGs will not work without a culture of mutual understanding and appreciation of other forms of knowledge. It will not work without opportunities for true participation and for collective governance. That means making decisions effectively together between academics and non-academics in the organization. So to push forward sustainability in our organizations, it is necessary to develop places of encounter for different groups that can serve as kind of a neutral ground for developing sustainability projects. And apart from these rather pragmatic considerations, there is, from my side, another dimension in this breaking down of the barriers between the different groups, and that is the university as a training ground for skills necessary in today's transformation. I am convinced that it is an essential competence for shaping sustainability shift of today in the larger society, to be able to deal with people who have different educational backgrounds, who may not be as interested in green stuff as you are, who have different political opinions and maybe vote for different parties than you would, but who nonetheless are equal partners in a joint effort to reach the SDGs. So working together across boundaries is a central part of a culture of sustainability, and who, I would say, if not higher education institutions with all their intellectual potential and all their freedom, should serve as a model for successful collaboration. So I'll leave it with that here and jump in the final minutes to my third and much shorter but not less important point. And this third point is concerned with learning and teaching. So what are the elements of a culture of sustainability in learning and teaching? First thing I would argue is a change in perception of what students are and what studying means. And this may sound like something that doesn't need to be emphasized, but students are neither customers of universities, nor are they cases to be administered as efficiently as possible. They are grown-up persons who bring their own ideas and interests, who have expertise in certain areas, and who decided to become part of an academic community, at least for a certain time in their life. And as such, they are not more or less worth in the organization than the professor with the fancy ERC grant or the head of the examination office. And from that point of view, if you look at students and studying in this way, quality education, as it is highlighted by SDG 4, is about much more than just guaranteeing access to educational institutions, which is a necessary condition, of course, and which is a problem in many regional and social contexts. But quality education is more. It is about giving students the opportunity to get involved and shape their educational biographies a bit more on their own. So in higher education, this could involve letting them make decisions about course topics or about whole study programs, giving them more opportunities to engage in transdisciplinary projects that help solve problems in their local communities, real-world problems, if you will, or encouraging them to contribute to what I described in the first part, making university operations more sustainable. I'm aware that there are many flagship projects in universities around the world that implement exactly what I just said, but what is more important for the sustainability shift in general is what happens on a broad scale in the boring, standard, everyday university life. And here I think it's fair to say that not everywhere there is a sufficient awareness of the fact that such a change, as I described, will cost resources. You participatory courses without much more time and energy. You don't adapt your teaching contents to students' interests without much more time and energy. And you don't work together with external stakeholders without much more time and energy. And I guess everyone here could have add another 5 points to the list. But anyone who is responsible for higher education institutions should know that despite all the mental shifts I described, and that could seem as if they wouldn't cost anything, implementing SDGs and establishing a culture of sustainability will not be a byproduct. It will cost time and energy and money. And the last positive sentence in 25 seconds to give you something positive at the very end. I'm fully convinced that higher education institutions provide the perfect soil for creating what I would call upward spirals. That is, an environment in which ideas and projects come from everyone and spark other ideas and projects. And this is the organizational challenge we face, creating exactly such environments. And with that, I'm finished, and thank you very much, and I'm very much looking forward to the debate later.
Thank you very much, Karsten, for these really interesting reflections. And I should say that you have basically explained what we are all dreaming of, in particular through the EC2U Alliance. So we all wish that we can really reach what you have described, that will also serve what Veronica was presenting before. Now I would like to give the floor to the next speaker, and I'm very pleased to welcome Jade Alzieu, who is policy officer at the association called So Coopération in French, or So Cooperation if we speak English, in France. And this is a regional association, and Jade, you will give us concrete examples on the territorial dynamics of the SDGs. So as you can see in the audience, we are really going at all stages, all scales of this very important framework, and this will hopefully support the interesting discussion. Jade, it's you.
Thank you. I'd just like to say thank you for the invitation. It's really an honor to give some example of the local implementation of the SDGs in Nouvelle-Aquitaine, the region. I'm just going to share my screen. Does it work?
Yes, it's coming.
Perfect.
Yes, we do see the slides.
Perfect. I'm going to cut my camera also because of the connection.
Yes, please.
Can you do it? Thank you. Well, I don't know how to do it. Sorry. So I just will start. So I'm just going to say that So Coopération is a non-profit organization in Bordeaux and Poitiers. We are in 2 cities, and we are working with multi-stakeholders, a lot of partners in different types of organizations. We work with non-profit organizations, we work with business companies, we work with university and and training center, and we work with local authorities, with municipality, departments, and all local authorities. So in 2019, we decided to make a study about what are the dynamics in Nouvelle-Aquitaine territory of the implementation of the SDGs, and we tried to respect all these types of organizations. So we really searched to know how all these organizations use the SDGs. Just to have two elements of context. So the France had made a roadmap in 2019 to explain how to implement the SDGs in the country. And there is a lot of public policies to help local authorities to use the SDGs. In the region, we do have a lot of different kinds of measures about sustainable development, not only SDGs, not always SDGs, but about sustainable development. Some of them are legal measures, so they don't have the choice to make it, but other of them, like Neoterra, a roadmap, are really a region decision to make a roadmap about environment transition and climate change problems. And this dynamic helps the local dynamic of the other organizations. So about the motivation first, then the limits the organization meets to implement the SDGs, and then I will illustrate it with some examples. So first of all, why does the organization incorporate the SDGs in Nouvelle-Aquitaine? The first one we realized was that all the organization wants to be a part of the public policy in different scales. So for some of them, it's the international public policy who matters. For others, it's the national one. For others, it's the local one. But all of them want to be a part of it. Why do they want it? There is two kinds of reasons. The first one is that it legitimates their action. If you take the example of an organization working in cooperation and solidarity, international cooperation and solidarity, sometimes it could be hard to explain why you do projects in foreign country and not in France, especially if you talk about poverty, for example. So politically, it's a bit complicated to legitimate the action, and the public policies help to do that. And the SDGs are public policies, but are an international agenda. So it's really strong to explain the action, to legitimate it. With this agenda, international agenda, and then we saw it earlier with the European Union measures, with the French measures and the local measures, there is a lot of financial opportunities. So for the organization, whatever the type of the organization, non-profit organization or local authorities or business companies, all of them do have the same problem. It's like to live, financially live, especially during this crisis. So the SDGs are really an opportunity about it. But I don't want to be so global, because each organization does have her own story about SDGs, and the motivations can change according to the organization. What we realize is that most of the time it's only one person at the origin, of the SDGs implementation. It's only one person, one driving person to implement the SDGs. One person who started to talk about it, who started to make research about it and think how it was possible to use it. And most of the time, these SDGs stay at the project scale in the organization. Most of the time, it's only one project about the SDGs in the middle of other projects about social issues, about environment, about etc., etc. It's really, there is only few organizations using the SDGs to rethink all the organization, all the missions of the organization, all the goals of the organization. If we now talk about the difficulties, one of them is that the SDGs are interconnected. So as we talk about transversality, which includes transdisciplinarity, which includes to connect the SDGs between the others, which includes to work with different types of organizations, like we do. And it's for the organizations really nice to use this transversality to explain a subject. It can need to have a complex vision of a subject, a complete vision of a subject, but it's also really hard to know how to use it because they are not used to think like that, to work like that, because since years now we work by specialization. So rethink a whole organization, trying to make transversality between people, between the missions of the people, it's really hard for the organization in local area. And when we try to train, when the organization tries to train, they see that there is not a lot of training to really understand how to use the SDGs in a concrete way. There is a lot of training to understand what are the SDGs, how it works, why it's important, which kind of scale we have to use to implement the SDGs. But there is not a lot of training to really use it in a concrete way in the organization. So this is a miss in Nouvelle-Aquitaine, and I tried to search in France, in the country. There is not a training center, there is not a reference about it. So to illustrate a bit the organization we met and how we had these results, I have 4 examples in Nouvelle-Aquitaine region. So the first one is Niort. Niort is a city, it's a middle city in Nouvelle-Aquitaine, in the west of the middle west of the Nouvelle-Aquitaine, and Niort took part of an experimental apparatus of the Transition and Solidarity Ministry. So they began 2 years ago to rethink all the sustainable development strategy of the city with the SDGs. Last year, they made a roadmap about all the municipality skills and how it is connected to an SDG and how it can be improved by the SDG. For me, Niort is the city in France because it's an experimental apparatus, so it's really the first city in France using the SDGs to rethink all the organization, all the missions, all the skills of a city in France. There is other examples, but more in a project case of the organization. There is Curios. Curios is an association in Poitiers. Curios is an association around education, but non-formal education, more next to schools and universities. And they developed a project. The project is MOOD. So it's about new methods and pedagogic tools to raise awareness to the SDGs. So there is some tools about the SDGs, what are the SDGs, but other about some SDGs, like how to use the gender SDG, how to use I don't know, the climate change, the water one, etc., etc., to really understand and educate to the SDGs and to sustainable development. There is another project, and I'm glad to talk about it because it's a cooperation project. So the name is Odyssey. So Cooperation created a group, transdisciplinary group and multi-stakeholder group around the SDGs to think together how to implement the SDGs in Nouvelle-Aquitaine. And this group decided to create a project around this cause to financially support projects around the SDGs in the region and also in a foreign country, and to build a community around the SDGs to respond to the needs of training in the territory. With the community, we thought that it's going to be helpful to share our tools, to share our experience, to share our analysis around the SDGs. And finally, there is another example I wanted to share with you. It's the SDGs French Tour. It's a Comité 21, Comité 21 project. And since 2016, the Comité 21, the Comité 21, started this project to make a tour in France about the SDGs in different kinds of cities. The first one was in Angoulême, in Nouvelle-Aquitaine, to sensibilize citizens to the SDGs and to help different organizations working on the SDGs to meet each other, to create a kind of network around this event. Different events were made a couple of years ago. Last year, obviously, not that much, I think only one, but the year coming, this one, we planned to make at least 4 events in the region, in big cities like Bordeaux and smaller cities like New York, to talk about SDGs and to try to sensibilize the citizens to the question of the SDGs. There is a lot of other examples. There is a lot of other kind of using of the SDGs. All the municipalities don't use it the same way. There is also a lot of different kind of tools, and the Région Nouvelle-Aquitaine is really advanced on the SDG subject. There is a lot of different kind of organizations working on this subject if you compare to other regions. But these ones are for me the most representative of what can be, what can exist on the territory of Nouvelle-Aquitaine. And that's it. Just wanted to say thank you for your attention. And I put some, if you want later, I put some resources to read a bit about local implementation of the SDGs.
Thank you very much, Jade. We will indeed share these references on the EC2U website. And I just would like to recall the audience that you can put your questions on the chat. And this will now be the moment for the discussion with our speakers. So if Veronika, Karsten, and Jade, you can all appear, because we will try to, although we are a bit behind schedule, we will keep some minutes to react and discuss on your different presentations. So indeed, again, the audience is invited to put questions on the chat, and they will be forwarded to me. May I actually ask a first question to each of you, one responding one after another, of course. We have seen actually some very interesting similarities in your speeches, and just a few key words mean in particular the role of training. We have seen the role of training on the associations, on the citizens. We have seen probably as well the role of training in accompanying the academic staff in changing their ways of working. Probably there is also training at the policymakers level, Veronika. So how actually would you see currently the state of this training, and do you see universities as a potential provider of such specific training? Veronika, maybe first.
Thank you, Ludovic, and this is a very good question. And there has been quite a lot done, and it's very encouraging to see that universities are embedding the environmental education in the curriculum already. But so your question is probably more towards also policymakers and other groups. So yes, definitely universities can help a lot in this through the different ways of educational streams, not only the normal straightforward education, but also the long life learning courses, or what was mentioned also the summer courses, and so there are definitely ways. We are cooperating, as you know, with some universities already, and I would like to mention it also here that we are participating in some massive open online courses already. So I think this is the way that we should also, as UNEP, reflect what are the key areas that need to be strengthened in the training. We started to work also much more with cities, with local authorities, and here also comes your great experience, university-city collaboration. So there I think that we can join forces as well to provide training for different stakeholders. And as Karsten mentioned in his intervention, being the third mission of the university to engage with the society, and definitely progress has been made, but there's still lots to do, and from my point of view, definitely engagement of universities would be very, very helpful.
Before actually raising the same question to the two other speakers, could I immediately react to you, Veronika, by asking more specifically, when you, for instance, try to develop the cooperation at the highest policy level between the UN and, let's say, the European policymakers, do you sometimes encounter training issues? And what I mean by that is that you see that indeed your the policymakers, your counterparts, may not fully capture what are all the impact of the different SDGs, for instance, which is indeed then a training issue also from the policymakers' viewpoint.
Yes, that's true. But for our partners, policy point of view, so if European institutions or member states, we don't actually provide trainings as such. We have more events where we explain some of the key findings of our reports, where we try to recommend some policy recommendations for action. So not as a training as such, I don't recall at the moment. But there are lots of activities that we are doing also for policymakers, but for public in general. For example, lifestyle choices, and I think somebody mentioned that. I think it was again Karsten, the behavioral change. So there we are doing some targeted. I wouldn't say training in the conventional sense, but more presentation.
Thank you. By the way, I should mention, Veronika, that some participants are asking where they can obtain the data on the SDGs indicators. So we will share with the audience some of the links that you have already provided to us, if you agree, Veronika. Karsten, could I maybe move to you and say you mentioned that indeed one of the key points is the transdisciplinarity or the multidisciplinarity. Where do you see the current obstacles in really moving forward in what you were calling for, that is this real collective governance, as you mentioned?
Okay, I think there are different challenges in there. So my mind works that I see challenges everywhere. So how much time do I have? I try just one or two thoughts on that. First, in contexts like this, we tend to cherish transdisciplinarity and say it is the golden way to solve all of the problems. And I would always say it's not the solution for everything, but it's for certain problems model that works. But promoting transdisciplinarity does not mean that that kind of basic research is not wanted anymore. So that as a sentence before. The greatest obstacle, I think, is again something mental. So sorry for bringing all the hippie stuff here, but I think the COVID pandemic has shown very, very well, at least in the German context, and I guess it was very similar in other countries too, how the relationship between people outside academia and scientists work, and that trust in science is very high good, but that people tend to get a bit aggressive if they think they are treated paternalistic by scientists. So I think the key to successfully work transdisciplinary is to leave this model of a scientific authority who knows what to do and who knows what's the best solution for everything, and that people should learn more to listen, that scientists should learn more to listen to people and to appreciate and cherish other forms of knowledge. And I don't see any place in the scientific system where you can learn that in the normal training or career tracks. There, at least what I know here, there is no option to really learn that. And so this would be one thing. Where can we really train these transdisciplinary things without losing career options? So if you only want to publish in journals and get your position, then it's a high risk to do that. So the whole academic system should cherish more these ventures in working with external stakeholders. I could go on for many more hours on that, but I don't want the others.
Sure. Maybe actually why I directly share with you. We have a question actually, somebody asking, do you see specific incentives that could be directly coming from the community itself, or maybe from the business side, or where really interdisciplinarity could be promoted? Does it come from actually the way careers are developed? How to really promote? Do you see solutions?
Well, if I wouldn't be I wouldn't have the position if I had the solutions. I would say one thing is in the whole funding system, because, I mean, let's be honest, we can talk about all these idealistic things about working for society and so, but how we stay in the system is when we get funded somehow. And if this funding system isn't adapted to true transdisciplinary projects where you can not say what will come out, what's the outcome. You don't know in transdisciplinary projects, but I have the impression when you write a grant application, you need to have the result in advance, and that doesn't work in transdisciplinary projects, and other projects too, but we all pretend that it works. And the other thing is, when you ask how do people get positions in the system, so how does someone become a professor or gets a permanent position in the system? Someone who does experimental research with external stakeholders normally doesn't fulfill the criteria to get permanent positions, because the reward system is purely oriented on inner academic criteria. And that is something we can change. We can say, okay, this person is engaged in a transdisciplinary project with a city or a region or something like that. Let's cherish that the same way we cherish an ERC grant. And nothing against ERC grants, they are the gold standard, but that's something we can change, well, tomorrow or today. So let's not wait.
There are actually other questions that could go directly to you, Karsten, but it actually lead me to raise more questions to Jade, because there is an interconnection here, because we clearly see that maybe also SDGs are a bit too difficult to directly tackle or to directly grasp. So Jade, in your own experience, do you think that they should be redefined or simplified, or how to make them more accessible?
This is the French roadmap to simplify, to make 5 with 17, and we don't really agree with that because I said it, the interest of the SDGs is the complex way, the kind of complex system. But it's more like the indicators. For example, there is some international, there is some European, there is some French now, but they have some. It's still too global. We need to have some French roadmap for local authorities, for local organizations, to how to implement on territories on this lowest scale the SDGs. I think the small municipality who started to use the SDGs will help with that. And then for organization, I think it's always the same problem. There is a lot of different public policies, and they recut each other. So sometimes we don't know if we have to use the SDGs or if we have to use other public policies. And this is where, but maybe it's really French, I don't know, but this is where the organization get lost on how to use it and what to use.
Okay, so a problem of visibility and complex, too many policies that may actually interact with each other.
Yeah, but I think the education and the communication around the SDGs, this is why I presented the SDGs French tour. It's really important. There is still a lot of actors, a lot of organizations like schools, for example, who doesn't know the SDGs and doesn't talk about it. And there is a lot of work to do here, because we just have 9 years now to implement it and to achieve the goals.
True. Thank you very much, Jade. So I would welcome that the 3 speakers stay with us, and depending on the questions at the very end, we may also interact with you again. So thank you to all 3 for these really interesting viewpoints at the different levels. I would like now to start the roundtable. So I would be very happy to welcome now the first participant to the roundtable, and this is Cena. Good afternoon, Hela. Thank you for being with us. You are the Vice Rector on 3rd mission at the University of Pavia, and you are exactly in the topic of the discussion today. So you have 3 minutes to give us a brief highlight of what you're doing in Pavia, and this will also feed the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for this invitation. It's an honor to be here with you at this first European campus of City Universities Forum. I'm attending this meeting, as Ludovic said, as an ambassador of my university, which is one of the partners of the alliance EC2U with the other 6 universities from the European Union that Ludovic mentioned in his introduction. As a pro-rector responsible for the 3rd mission, I would like to highlight the crucial and strategic role of the 3rd mission to achieve sustainable development. Indeed, 3rd mission is a mission that all the universities, so even EC2U will have to care because it plays a crucial and strategic role in dealing with the territory. And its effect is measured by impact on society, on economy, and on culture. Of course, we know that this is also and mainly accomplished by education and research. However, universities must seek to generate knowledge even outside the academic environment to the benefit of the social, cultural, and economic development. This can be exploited through different project tasks, events supporting technology transfer of research, academic engagement, lifelong learning, and public engagement by means of international collaborations like the ones within the EC2U Alliance. And this webinar is a perfect example of public engagement activities sharing knowledge and benefits of higher education with all of you. Obviously, as previous speakers said, to make all these efforts more effective and consistent, it is due considering the United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals in the European society with the aim of implementing any activity in the international frame of sustainable development. Focusing on public engagement, I would like to give you a simple example and a take-home message of a way that we, for example, experimented to disseminate academic knowledge and build synergies towards sustainable development. We identified the word well-being as a trademark for our activity, not only because the word is taken from the health and well-being SDG number 3, but also as a fil rouge that runs through all the SDGs, serving as a cultural model of thoughts and actions. We need to be devoted to promoting and contributing to present and future projects and even to different issues concerning human well-being, including COVID-19 pandemic impact that destroyed many and implemented many problems. But however, we really need to do this with another and more important effort, which is a long-term and integrated approach. So not only multidisciplinarity, but also integration. This is very important because we have to meet also the wishes and the needs and update our goals according to wishes and needs of the stakeholders and make science more accessible to the general public, including students, giving them the opportunity to get involved, to be motivated, responsible, work together to meet the expected and very urgently needed sustainable changes for the future world. Thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Hellas. Indeed, I think that your reflections will probably also be in strong connection with other members of the round panel. So thank you very much. See you very soon. I would like now to propose the second participant, Patricia Pereira da Silva. Patricia, very pleased to see you today. You are the Pro-Rector for Planning and for Sustainable Development at the University of Coimbra. And of course, as such, you are particularly also relevant to this discussion today. So please, Patricia.
Hello, good afternoon to you all. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I would like to begin by thanking the invitation addressed that greatly honors me, not only in personal terms, but also the University of Coimbra. So thank you, Ludovic, and the organization for the invitation. It's also an honor to join this panel of European colleagues from such prestigious universities and organizations. We know that historically, the most important function of any university and also of the University of Coimbra and public universities around the world have been teaching, research, and knowledge transfer. But now it is also increasingly necessary to give greater consideration to well-being of the university community and of society as a whole, as previous speakers already mentioned. Universities do really need to understand their social and environmental setting, and especially take action to adapt the changing needs of the society to which they belong. So, as our rector usually mentions, Professor Amilcar Falcao usually mentions that throughout our secular existence, we are dated from 1219, as you can see on the screen. University of Coimbra has always been based as an institution ahead of its time. And another thing that would not be expecting of a school where impermanence one recreates knowledge, the greatest antidote to temporal erosion that leads to the crystallization of many institutions. So we can see, and we really hope that everybody acknowledges that the University of Coimbra believes sustainability and knows that every day that passes is precious time that goes away to the implementation of preventive and corrective measures, this meaning sustainable. Young people demand an effective change in environmental policies. The national and international community points in a consensual and unequivocal way that at the risks that humanity incurs by foolishly degrading its own habitat. And almost all major world leaders, with particular emphasis on the United Nations, elect climate action as an undisputed priority in the coming years. So, although society is intensely confronted with this emergency, essential measures leading to the balance that it is urgently needed to achieve are still incipient, both in form and in rhythm. So the space of science, technology, and more advanced teaching is, I guess, the most prone, is the right environment in which we are called to forge ideas and invent solutions for a better world, especially when we are faced with the absence of a path well-defined and structured or politically assumed. So that it's we are proud to be part of this alliance of EC2U that I think it's a very good example of putting in action all of our wishes. Universities cannot remain indifferent to the climate emergency. They cannot conduct themselves as structures immobilized and stagnant in time, unable to face societal changes. They cannot censor potentially reforming measures which they find inconvenient or likely to be derogatory. Non-conformism, constructive criticism, and factual data-based claim are principles that must move us, despite some social unrest that perhaps its adoption might originate on the part of some established mentalities that we wish to change. So these principles aim only to translate the purpose of a pedagogical posture associated with the dissemination of knowledge. The University of Coimbra, with the weight of its legacy, bears an increased responsibility in face of the crisis, both serious and real, of climate change, and must also shake up some dominant logics, especially if of mere political nature, lacking scientific substrate, acting for the generations of tomorrow. So we know that science foreshadows a gloomy scenario that is true and objective and that we cannot deny, but at the same time reveals that it is within our power to reverse it. So universities are in the forefront of this movement. However, this desideratum will only be achievable with a rapid and comprehensive transition involving energy, soil, transport, buildings, industrial systems in the light of the SDGs. In fact, these were set by the UN in its 2030 agenda in order to seek to undermine government entities, civil society, local communities, and the private sector in close and effective international cooperation.
Patricia?
Yes, I will come to an end now.
Yes, please.
Yes. As a university, we were the first to make such a commitment in a public and unequivocal way. Taking advantage of the work developed in the recent past, we intend to increase this debate. So I think it's possible to strategically position the university at the forefront of a national and international context. So we were quite proud to have positioned ourselves as the first Portuguese university in the ranking of the Times Higher Education. We ranked on the 62nd position among more than 600 universities worldwide, and we were ranked on the 7th position regarding ODS number 3 related to health. So I think, and just to wrap up, that a research university like ours has an obligation to mitigate its own environmental impact by promoting, streamlining, and accompanying actions congeminated and developed within the academy, and EC2U is a very important example of our action. So thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. I would like now to call the next participant. This is Laurent-Emmanuel Brizzi. Laurent-Emmanuel, you are the Vice Rector for Infrastructures and Campus Life at the University of Poitiers, and you will give us some examples of what it means, the SDGs in Poitiers.
Okay, thank you very much, Ludovic, for this kind of invitation. So, the University of Poitiers is implying the sustainable development and the societal responsibility for many years. The start was in 2009 with the French Plan Vert, so Green Agenda, if you prefer, according 5 axes: strategy and governance, education, research, environment, and the last one was social policy and territorial anchoring. So in 2016, it was the first national recognition with the DDRS label. So DDRS means sustainable development and social responsibility. So this label is the result of a collective work of a dozen of university and grandes écoles. So grandes écoles is engineering school in France. So the CGE and the CPU. And of course, the ministry in charge of the sustainable development and the ministry in charge of the higher education, but also the French network of students for sustainable development. And Poitiers was one of the 2 first universities to obtain this label. So this label is both a recognition for our action and also an opportunity to continue this action. So an opportunity to go further because, in fact, the road is still long to reach our goals. So in 2017, the university administrators vote a roadmap for sustainable development that define the path to follow in order to transform the campuses of the University of Poitiers into eco-campuses. So with that, we have put the strategy in place, but we must now decline it through our territories. So each year, new achievements in buildings, biodiversity, energy, mobility, waste management bring us a little closer to our objectives. So in order to highlight my talk, so some concrete examples. So since 2015, on the main campus, we share our heat network with the Crous, the region, and is connected to our biomass boiler house. So, and we are now continuing this dynamics on the other side on the campuses. So our goal is to obtain 95% of our heat covered by renewable energy before the end of 2022. And another example, so since 2019, 100% of our electricity comes from certified renewable energy production, thanks to a consortium with the Poitiers Hospital, which is very close to the university. So Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Laurent, for these very concrete examples that indeed show that University in Poitiers is very much engaged. Let's now move to the next speaker, Daniela Soitu from University of Liège. You are the leader of one of the EC2U work package based on the UN SDG number 3, good health and well-being. And in 3 minutes sharp, you will give us examples on how the EC2U Alliance is indeed addressing the SDGs and in particular the SDG number 3.
Yeah, thank you, Ludovic. Actually, the focus on the third United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, good health and well-being for all, are enabling us to invest in a particularly important asset European Union have, and this is human resource. Promoting the knowledge square model, we are working on a sustainable mindset and culture in the frames of a joint master program and a virtual institute, both designed by the 7 partner universities in the EC2U frame. Graduates of the joint master program in lifelong well-being and healthy aging, Lifeline, will gain valuable competencies such as awareness and reactiveness to age, health status, well-being and cultural diversity, in-depth knowledge of lifelong mental, physical, social, emotional, and environmental well-being, applied skills for a healthy life, including aging, so they will learn for themselves too, advanced research methods, and not the last, digital competencies for health and social care in the European job market. Well-being and healthy life during the years are in the core of the EC2U Virtual Institute for Good Health and Well-being. The Institute will develop specific approaches in education, research, innovation, and service transfer to the community in the long run. It will be the headquarters for EC2U Literacy Lab and Education for All in the area of good health and well-being, EC2U Transformative Research Hub, EC2U Management Service for a Healthy Campus, and online peer counseling lab for students. The activities in the Virtual Institute for Good Health and Well-being are focused on topics such preventive approaches in health, social determinants of health and well-being, practices of well-being, a healthy and active lifestyle during the whole life, including aging, adequate policies for good health and well-being in the cities and countries. As a result, transformative research about lifelong well-being and healthy aging in the EC2U 7 countries and Europe will be performed by mixed teams, including academics, administrative staff, students, and citizens. Yearly summer schools, workshop, itinerant conferences will enrich intercultural, professional, and academic connections. Guidelines for local authorities, policy papers will bring together the interests, needs, experiences, and solutions from academics, but also from cities and citizens. So, step by step, we plan to contribute to the well-being management, to a fair, accessible, and informed co-created policies in the health and welfare, to a right-based approach for people of all ages, and also to a person-centered approach during all life courses. In other words, we are planning to implement the wishes I've just heard and the activities we were planning in the EC2U Alliance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniela, and good luck, because we all wish that indeed this very ambitious plan will be 100% fruitful. Now, I would like to hear the views from maybe actually the most important speaker of today, and your position in the last is not actually representative of what we are considering, because you, Angel Canal Alonso, you are the EC2U student representative at the University of Salamanca, and you are directly involved in the EC2U governance. So we would like to hear what are your views, but also more general the students' views on the SDGs. And just to tell you that we actually received some questions on in particular, do the students feel concerned? Do they feel that they can engage in the SDGs? And this is indeed one of the very important aspects of the EC2U Alliance. So please, Angel.
Thanks, Ludovic. Okay, so The problem is that today the impact and the engagement of the students in the SDG development is minimal, at least from their point of view. Of course, the policies that are shaped around these goals, both in universities and in the different administrations and corporations, change their surroundings. But most students are not aware of these changes and are not aware that those changes are motivated by the SDGs. And sometimes, if you go to any university campus and ask a random student about the SDGs, most of them will confess that they don't know what are the SDGs. And those who know about the SDGs will probably know them because of some sort of academic subject, not because they are involved in the process of change. That, of course, any student you ask will agree with the SDGs and the need for a general change of attitude to ensure a better future. I believe that it's necessary to deploy a series of communication, awareness, and sensibilization campaigns and policies that project those SDGs to the students and the young people in general. Because if we want the SDGs to represent a common framework for action in all countries, it's necessary that students are involved. Moreover, young people are often one of the most powerful advocates for implementing any policy change, as we have seen in the climate change marches and most of the political changes in the last decade. I'm confident that a proper communication of the SDGs will really boost their implementation thanks to the drive of the students. This involvement, which has to be initiated through a good communication strategy, can be translated into student participation in the decision-making processes and in the action for change itself, for example, in volunteering programs or awareness-raising campaigns themselves.
Well, Angel, I think that your presence with us means that we can actually maybe take a few more minutes and just continue the discussion with you. I'm pretty sure that all the speakers will support this idea. We really want to hear you more on this. Could I ask you, among the different aspects that you have just mentioned, if you had, let's say, a one top priority in putting into action for really having more students on board, what would you propose? How to get them really engaged and participating to the fulfillment of the SDGs? What would you, as a first action to do?
So I think that the first priority should be implementing the knowledge about the SDGs inside the curricula, inside the formative structure, because using social media or using news campaigns works to let them know that these things exist. Okay, the UN SDGs exist, but we want them not only know about the existence of these things, just we want them to involve in the process and think that including not like a part of like a subject inside a bachelor, but we need to integrate the SDGs inside the bachelor at different points. But we need this kind of process.
So you mean that the curricula of the future should be completely integrating the SDGs, so that they are not disciplinary anymore, but they would actually support what we have heard before from the different speakers, that we directly train the students to think more transdisciplinary and directly see the impact on all aspects?
Yeah, absolutely. We want in a bachelor to obtain an expert in a field, but that expert in the field has to have some knowledge about what is happening around them. So having those SDGs inside the subjects, inside how the curricula is built when we design a new degree, is one of the most important things, because we can have a computer scientist and he can be a really good programmer, that when he's programming, he needs to know, okay, so why do I have to change this code to adapt to the SDGs? Why, if I am an architect, why my building has to comply with this? We need to put these things inside the curricula.
Well, the good news is actually this is what we want also to develop in the EC2U Alliance, as you know, but as the audience should know as well. We indeed want to create starting with new master programs, but on the long term also developing this approach at the bachelor level that are indeed completely new ways of teaching involving directly indeed SDGs in the curricula. So let's hope that we can make this happen, and hopefully this will indeed embark all the students with us in this very important path. Also, I should like to mention, and for this I will just take 30 seconds of your time, because what I would like to share with you is something important in the months to come. We indeed want to encourage this collegial approach with all the partners, with the students, with the researchers. And just I would like to tell you that in a few weeks from now, there will be information on what we call the first EC2U think tank that will be organized during the month of April this year on the topic value for your values. So there will be some activities where the public and all the partners and members of our community will be invited to participate, to share our views and to co-create together the university and the society that we wish for. So with this, I would like to close the first webinar. To those interested, tomorrow we will have a second webinar on the future European degree, directly actually connected to what Angel was actually calling for. And I hope to see you there tomorrow and also at the next EC2 event. I wish you a good end of afternoon, and I hope to see you soon. And maybe just before closing, I invite all the speakers to put their camera on again. And I would like to thank you all for these very interesting presentations and discussion. Of course, the time was a bit short. We could have discussed much more, but we will have several occasions in the weeks, months, and years to come. Thank you very much to all of you, and I wish you and to the audience good luck, and that you all take care. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.